Senate will come to order. Senate will come to order for this Thursday, February 17th. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Let's go to work. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Anderson. Baldwin. Beitman. Boner. Bouchard. Case. Cooper. Driscoll. Ellis. French. Murphy. Guru. Hicks. Hutchings. James. Kinski. Kolb. Cost. Landon. McEwen. Nethercott. Pappas. Perkins. Rothfuss. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. Wasserberger. Bouchard. President Dockstader.
Here.
30 present.
Prayer by Father Cronkleton.
Let us pray. We read in St. Paul's letter to the Colossians, "Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, heartfelt compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving one another if one has grievances against another. As the Lord has forgiven you, so must you also do. And over all these, put on love, that is the bond of perfection." Lord God, as the week moves on and all the newness is faded, we are in the midst of daily routine and a respite is not yet here. Tiredness and the push to accomplish as much as can be, given the short amount of time and pending deadlines, can drain and frustrate us. Help us to model charity and compassion in our words and deeds. Be with us in our daily duty of introducing bills and resolutions, considering them, engaging in debate, and voting. Grant us knowledge, wisdom, and good judgment, and an eye towards what best serves the common good of the people that we have been chosen to serve. We ask this in all things, in your holy name. Amen.
Senator Furphy, would you lead us in the pledge?
For the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the reading clerk please read the Journal Committee report?
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 16, 2022 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Kolb, Chairman.
Are there any objections? There being none, report is adopted. Business for the day. Dr. Paulus of Smart Sports Cheyenne will be here to help us today. Stay healthy. Thank you, Doctor. Welcome to Senate Smart Sports. So maybe Chairman Perkins has a golf injury he could talk to you about. There we go. All right. Chaplain of the day is noted, Father Cronkleton. Today in Wyoming history, in 1870, Esther Hobart Morris was officially appointed Justice of the Peace. Quote for the day: "It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent of the species. It is the one that is most adaptable to change." Charles Darwin. Session status: tomorrow is the last day for bill introductions. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 16, 2022, message number 4. Mr. President, this is to inform you that the following changes to the House Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions Committee will be in effect for the remainder of the 2022 budget session and following interim. Representative Andy LeBeau will replace Representative Mike Yen, and Representative Marshall Burt will replace Representative Mike Greer. Sincerely, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Introduction, reading, and reference of bills, and a note for the members of the Senate, please. We're hearing from the folks across the state trying to listen to you, and they can't hear you very well. And those behind the bar need to talk a little quieter. Thank you. Okay. So speak closely when you get to your mic. Speak closely for your friends and neighbors across Wyoming. Senator Landon,
So, Mr. President, privilege to the floor, please.
please do.
I just want to back up what you said. As a couple of broadcasters, you know, have done a few football games in our lives. You got to get right up here.
That's right.
You know, let's listen carefully to each other and get right up to the microphone. What do you say?
Very good.
Take me out to the ballpark.
Thank you for that coaching and advice. That comes from a 4A referee too, 4A official. Senator Biden.
Mr. President, may I have privilege of the?
Please
floor
do.
real quick? Thank you, Mr. President. You just announced Dr. Paulus. I don't know if you all remember back, what was it, January of 21, I believe it was, on Zoom, I wasn't looking so hot and I had COVID really bad.
Yeah, you were looking a little rough
It
those
was
days.
looking a little rough. I had one foot in the grave, and if it wasn't for Dr. Paulus, I don't think I'd be standing here today, Mr. President. So I've never met him, and I'm glad he's here because I've always wanted to meet him and thank him for saving my life. And if I could give him a good shout out, and thank you for being my advocate, Dr. Paulus, and for checking in on me every hour through this horrible COVID thing. He was phenomenal.
Wow.
And I
Thank you,
want to meet
Dr.
him and
Paulus.
shake my hand, shake his hand and thank him for saving my life. Thank you. Dr.
Thank you.
Paulus.
Thank you, Dr. Paulus. You're welcome to take a mic there at the desk for just a moment. I'll give you privilege of the floor if you would like, sir. See that open desk right there? I can turn that mic on just like that. It's all yours.
Well, thank you all. I'd just like to say that in the last 2 years, our life has really changed. And it has to do with a medical problem. I think that we need to address this like a medical problem and not a political problem. And we can solve this problem and get America opened up. And we have to support the doctors that treat early and don't let people just self-isolate until they can't breathe. And I want to thank you for all your support.
Thank you, Dr. Paulus. All right, let's proceed. Introduction, reading, and reference of bills. Senate File 102, first reading the bill. Reading clerk, read it in, please.
Senate File 102, Second Amendment Protection Act, sponsored by Representative Hicks.
Senator Hicks. Oh, MIA. Okay, we're going to proceed to the next. We'll come back. Oh, no, Senator Hicks, are you ready, sir?
That was on the consent list.
You want me to put it back a little ways?
Mr. Chairman, could you put that back for a little bit?
Will do. Next up for our consideration. Reading clerk, read in Senate. Please do. Go ahead.
Folks, there's no consent list today. These are all individual bills. So any of you that got bills, there is no such thing as a consent list. Each one gets introduction, I believe. Is that correct? Mr.
Correct.
President? So just so everybody knows, and let's have her read the entire list because the order has changed.
Reading
So
clerk.
everybody can be ready.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. So
I reordered it this morning.
let's, okay, we can't do that. So with that, we're going to go to the next one. Does that work for you? Okay, Okay, we're all good and ready to go up front here. Senate File 11, first reading of the bill. Please do.
What we were hoping you would do was, if you could just go through the list and let us know which bills are going to be read in which order. Before we do the first introduction, you have the stack there. If you just tell us read the stack up. I don't think, unless they're in ascending numerical order, I think we're going to be messing.
Now, let me
up.
clarify, because my clerk said I can't do that. She has more authority than you.
So it's just,
Just
we
a
just do
minute.
it
Just
and
a
we're like, surprise, it's your turn.
consultation here. Ellen? There we go. Got that little housekeeping matter taken care of. We are going to the list. Chairman Perkins, you have a list on your desk. We've laid back the first one. We're going to the next one, and everybody else involved. Yes, the list is really the list. Okay, with that, next bill up for our consideration is Senate File 11. First reading of the bill.
Senate File 11, display of state flag.
Senator Anderson, all yours, sir.
Mr. President, I move for the introduction of Senate File 11 and ask for your favorable consideration. A constituent brought this to me as a little problem that they're having in their life. They're heirs from Verna Keys, who designed your state flag. And Verna Keys lived in Buffalo, Wyoming when she designed the flag in 1916. She was a New York art graduate, designed the flag, and won the contest. And in 1917, we adopted her flag. You see in the bill that in 1919 we had the Daughters of the American Revolution had a contest. You see, we had a 1945. We had issue on that. In 1945, they gave Verna Keys 2 copies of the flag, but they asked that she keep it in her home. Well, those 2 copies right now are in the museum in Buffalo, where she came from, and in the library in Casper. And both of those entities aren't wanting to display the flag if it's going to break the law. So we said we'll fix it so that it's legal for you to have the state flag. And that's what happens on page 2, line 20 through 22. It gives them the authority to display, make a public display at a Wyoming State, County, or municipal building. That's all it does. It'll help the Verna Keys heirs to be relieved that they can do that without breaking the law. That's all we're asking, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Chief Clerk will call the roll, please. For those listening, 2/3 majority vote.
Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? I, Ellis. I, French. I, Furphy. I, Guru. I, Hicks. I, Hutchings. I, James. I, Kinsky. I, Culp. I, Cost. I, Landon. I, McEwen. I, Nethercott. I, Pappas. I, Perkins. Rothfuss. I, Salazar. I, Schuler. I, Scott. I, Steinmetz. I, Wasberger. I, Perkins. I, President Dockstetter. I, closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 11, 30 aye.
Senate File 11, having received two-thirds majority vote, is referred to Committee number 6. Travel. Okay, we'll go back to our original bill we started with, original file, Senate File 102. Reading clerk, please read it in.
Senate File 102, Second Amendment Protection Act, sponsored by Senator Hicks.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move for introduction, Senate File 102, Second Amendment Protection Act. Members of the body, this is a culmination of 3 months of work with our local law enforcement organizations that are pro-Second Amendment in the United States, and working with members of our Judiciary Committee to bring you a constitutionally sound bill that provides Wyoming citizens and Wyoming law enforcement the authority to push back under unconstitutional infringements upon the Second Amendment rights of the citizens of the state of Wyoming. It's grounded in our Constitution, and it's rooted in the Supreme Court decisions based on the Anti-Commandeering Act, Mr. President. This gives the people of the state of Wyoming to let the legislature that we are Second Amendment state. We believe in the protection of the Constitution and their Second Amendment rights, and I would ask for your favorable consideration of an aye vote on behalf of the citizens of the state of Wyoming.
Call the roll, please.
Introductory vote, Senate File 102, roll call. Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. No. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. No. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. No. Furphy. No. Guru. Aye. Hicks.
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings. Aye. James. No. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. Aye. McEwen. No. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Aye. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. No. Schuler. No. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstetter. Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 102, 21 aye, 9 no.
Senate File 102, having received a two-thirds majority vote, is referred to Committee number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 12, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 12, Airport Restaurant Liquor Licenses, sponsored by Senator Anderson.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, I would ask you to move Senate File 12, Airport Restaurant Liquor Licenses. This came from our local airport, but as it turns out, it affects about 4 airports in the state. What happens is they get a liquor license and they only use it for a few hours a day, and sometimes not every day. So the liquor license does not do much for the county, the city, anybody else. What they'd like to do is turn it into a resort license that does not go against the quota for the county. So the airport can have this resort license and the liquor license can be used in the community. all the airports have said they'd like to do this. They do not, all the airports do not have a liquor license, and all of them don't have a county liquor license. But everybody is interested in doing this. I've reviewed it with the liquor division. They're okay with it. I have not found any opposition to changing these licenses to a resort license. So I'd appreciate your positive vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. President.
Is this point of order? What do we have here?
Well, it's prior to the vote, Mr. President. I have a resort liquor license. I'd like to
Oh.
declare conflict. I couldn't think of any other way to do it. It's not quite a point of order. Thank you.
Well understood. And we may have another license. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too am a liquor license holder in an airport, so I'll be declaring conflict as well.
Thank you. Appreciate the notification. All right, Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 12, introductory vote roll call. Anderson.
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Case conflict. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. Driscoll conflict. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Murphy. Aye. Guru.
Conflict.
Conflict. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. James. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. Aye. McEwen. Conflict. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstader. Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 12, 26 aye, 4 conflict.
Senate File 12, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 21, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 21, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Accreditation Amendment, sponsored by Senator Cost.
Senator Cost, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for introduction of Senate File 21 and ask for your favorable consideration. What this is really strictly removal of an amendment from 2012 for drug courts, and this only involves drug courts. In 2012, there was an amendment put in that all drug courts would have to be accredited by one of 3 national accreditation groups. They have quite an expensive endeavor with about $8,000 that they're having to pay for that. And the state also credits them. So there's no need to have that accreditation. So all this does is removes the requirement that they must be accredited by one of those 3 national organizations. It does not say they cannot be or that they won't be. It just gives them the option to make that decision. It's short and it's to the point. The 3 of them, the one that's most commonly used is called CARF, C-A-R-F, and it is out of Canada. $8,000 they could use towards other patients. So I would ask that for your considerable favorable vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 21, introductory vote roll call. Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. No. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Murphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. James. No. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. I, McEwen. I, Nethercott. I, Pappas. I, Perkins. I, Rothfuss. I, Salazar. I, Schuler. I, Scott. I, Steinmetz. I, Wasserberger. I, President Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 21, 28 aye, 2 no.
Senate File 21, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee number 10, Labor Health. Mr. Floor Leader.
Sorry to interrupt. We got a long list this morning and we've got some important people. I'd like the privilege of the floor.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Fellow senators, join me in welcoming the Boys and Girls Clubs from the Douglas, Cheyenne, Sweetwater, and Central Wyoming. They've got 3 contestants for the annual Youth of the Year competition. Staff and board and the volunteers are all here. Got some of my really good friends here. Madison Blake from Sweetwater County, Julie Dysert from Natrona County, and Tommy Valencia from Laramie County. And Tommy received the State Youth of the Year Award. One of the best organizations in the state for youth. Please welcome me in the gallery over here and above us. Special shout out to Jan Gundy, who is, her and her group have been unbelievable supporters of Boys and Girls Clubs. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Welcome to the Senate. Congratulations on your honors. And those of you senators from those specific areas, there's your constituents. Thank you for coming to the Senate.
Thank you very much.
Senate File 22, first reading of the bill.
Really a big thank you. I'm so far.
Senate File 22, Utility Trailers Permanent Registration, sponsored by Senator Cost.
Well, hang on now. Go ahead, Senator.
Okay,
Costa.
sorry.
Let me just call on you there, but I appreciate your enthusiasm.
I move for introduction of Senate File 21 and ask for your favorable consideration. This is a little different. This is utility trailers. I took.
Just for the record, I need you to say that number again, 22.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Senate File 22.
Okay, you got a
Let me
good
get
start.
it.
Now let's go.
All right, we'll get there. This is a little different. This is utility trailers for a permanent registration. I've had a number of farmers talk to me about the idea of a lot of their lighter trailers and the fact of trying to keep track of which ones are due when. So I got a hold of Montana's registrations. And at first it would look like we could say, okay, let's work with all trailers, but that would be detrimental to our counties. And so I said, we better start out small. So we put it with the 6,000 or less, which is our first division of trailers in the state of Wyoming. And basically this is after 10 years of age, the trailer can be licensed for permanent with 5 payments equivalent to what your cost would be per year and an $87.50 charge for the preparation of a decal. This really would take away a lot of the problems we have with these smaller trailers and the fact that in our state, because the clerks really didn't want all these piling up together, but spread out, not knowing when a trailer is available or needs to be licensed and when it doesn't. So I'd ask you to think about how many trailers you have, and if you've got one over 10 years, you could apply for a permanent license. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait just a moment for the roll. We certainly keep our chief clerk running. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Senate File 22, introductory roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 22, 29 aye, 1 no.
Senate File 22, having received a 2/3 majority of the vote, is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next, Senate File 79, read it, clerk, read it in.
Senate File 79, Prohibition on Private Funds for Conducting Elections, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
Senator Steinmetz, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the introduction of Senate File 79, Prohibition of Private Funds for Conducting Elections, and ask for your favorable consideration. This Senate file is an old friend, as the Senate passed it overwhelmingly last session. However, the file ran out of time on the other side of the building. This legislation is part of the Secretary of State's work on ensuring election integrity. After the 2020 election cycle, weaknesses in the election process due to the use of private funds influenced elections in some of the battleground states at the local and state level. Although this has not happened in Wyoming, the Secretary of State is working preemptively to make sure private funds do not influence the government functions of elections and that we maintain the integrity of Wyoming elections. Senate File 79 does two things: prohibits the use of private funds for registering voters, preparing for conducting or overseeing an election, and makes exemptions for the use of private or donated funds for election training, education, meals, or food for and donated for poll workers or election staff. The bill does not apply to the acceptance of federal funds. Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask for your aye vote on Senate File 79.
Thank you, Senator Steinmetz. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory vote, roll call on Senate File 79. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll?
Excused?
Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 79, 30 aye.
Senate File 79, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate File 88, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 88, COVID and mRNA vaccine status, privacy and discrimination, sponsored by Senator Bouchard.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move Senate File 88 for introduction, COVID and mRNA vaccine status, privacy and discrimination. That title kind of says it all, Mr. President. What this bill does is says you can't ask and I don't have to tell. That's basically what the gist of this bill is. It does have provides for criminal and civil penalties. What it does on really the crux of the bill is on page 4. You cannot ask a person or inquire into a person's vaccination status. And there's other conforming language about there's immunity things that are in the current statutes that are changed on page 5 and 6. But in a nutshell, it's basically based on a privacy of healthcare, something that happened deeply personal of your own, and it should stay private if you want it to be.
So I'd ask for your consideration on this bill and a yes vote. Thanks.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File. Senate File 88, introductory roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? No. Cole? No. Cost? No. Landon? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. Driscoll? No. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote? Driscoll, no to aye. Closing vote? Closing vote closed. Senate File 88, 15 aye, 15 no.
Senate File 88. Having failed to receive 2/3 majority vote, Senate file has failed introduction. Senate File 89. First reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 89, Child Protection, Dangerous Drugs, sponsored by Senator Hutchings.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the introduction of Senate File 89, Child Protection, Dangerous Drugs, and ask for your favorable consideration. This bill was brought to me by a constituent, and it appears another senator had constituents bring it to them as well, so we merged them. So this is the joint work of several counties in our state. I'm going to give you the objectives of the bill, and then I'll give you a little background. I'm going to go ahead and read this. This bill's objective is to protect the unborn children from intentional and illegal exposure to harmful controlled substances that create bodily injury, permanent disability, or disfigurement at birth. This includes unborn children in the mandatory reporting requirements for exposure to non-prescribed harmful controlled substances, and provide reporting parties with the same statutory liability protections that are currently offered to mandated reporters under Wyoming statutes. It empowers the Wyoming Department of Family Services to manage reports of exposure to non-prescribed harmful controlled substances for unborn children through birth or until the termination of pregnancy in the same manner that they would manage a similar exposure for children after birth. It also creates a statutory criminal sanctions that provide accountability and prevention for the intentional and illegal exposure of an unborn child to harmful controlled substances, et cetera, et cetera. What we're finding now is that the mother cannot be held liable for these drugs under our current statute. So this bill would make that happen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory roll call, Senate File 89. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? No. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? No. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstader?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote? French, no to aye. McEwen, no to aye. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 89, 21 aye, 9 no.
Senate File 89, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor Health. Senate File 90, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 90, Capital Financing Select Committee membership, sponsored by Senator Hicks.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for introduction of Senate File 90, Capital Finance Select Committee membership. Members of the body, what this would do is enlarge the committee from a current 6 to current 7 members. Let me read to you what the Capital Finance Committee does. Is it monitors and establishes the implementation of state investment policy, excluding to the extent which investment goals are being achieved, prepares and submits recommendations to the legislature, including sponsoring legislation to improve our investments on state and local government investments, monitor state fund investments, and develop knowledge and expertise amongst the members regarding issues related to the investment of public funds and capital financing. Members of the body, our third highest source of revenue in our general fund is our investment earnings. And we have now established over the years, the last 4 or 5 years, the Investment Funds Committee. We also employ professional investment folks that oversee the almost $26 billion of investment of the state of Wyoming. Think about that, 26 billion. We've been advised from our investment professionals and the IFC that the state of Wyoming is not deriving the highest rate of return that we could off of those investments. And so, Mr. President, the idea to expand this committee by one is folks, we have a tremendous opportunity to increase our returns, our third highest source of funding the general fund, with numerous bills that we passed and those that are coming through the Capital Finance Committee. I truly believe that what we need to do is develop knowledge and expertise amongst the members of this body and our colleagues down the hall if we're going to achieve those increased returns. And so what I would ask is a favorable consideration that we allow the president and the speaker to appoint one more member of these committee to build our bench. That's you, to guide us towards higher rate of returns and diversify our income stream through those investments. And I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 90, introductory roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? No. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstader?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Ellis, aye to no. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 90, 24 aye, 6 no.
Senate File 90, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Senate File 92, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 92, driver's license or ID card renewal or extension exception, sponsored by Senator Landon.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. I would move for introduction of Senate File 92 and ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. President, this bill actually came to me not long ago from the office of one of our members of Congress. And what we ran into was the fact that we had a civil servant out there serving in a foreign country who needed to renew a driver's license. Well, you might remember that a few years ago, we passed the Real ID Act, and that has actually wound up to be very beneficial to our constituents, both in terms of travel and going across international lines, all those issues that came up with that. But one of the requirements of the Real ID Act is that you have to prove a permanent address in order to get your driver's license renewal. Well, what we have done in our statutes, Mr. President, we exempt our military members for obvious reasons and allow for special consideration there. But we do not allow for that special consideration for civil servants. We can't call it them civil servants in our statutes, and you'll see in the language that we don't do that. But that's what we're talking about, is those people who agree to serve, particularly in international venues. And this will simply allow them the same exemption as our military members. And the rules and regulations as to how that will be done will just be left up to the Department of Transportation. So I hope you'll support the bill. I think it's a good little fix to our statutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory roll call, Senate File 92. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Hutchings? No. James? No. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 92, 24 aye, 6 no.
Senate File 92, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 8, Corporation Transportation. Senate File 93, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 93, legislator voting records, legislative website, sponsored by Senator James.
Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 93 and ask for your favorable consideration. So I want to start by first saying this bill costs no money, and it will provide our constituents far easier access to our voting records than what is available now. Currently, if someone wants to see our voting record, they have to go to each individual bill on the LS website, and it takes a lot of time out of their day. And this would provide a far easier access to it. What it would do is I would put our voting record underneath the bios on the LSO website. So when they go and look up our information, they'll also be able to see our voting record along with it. And this is a very transparent bill, and it's very necessary for our constituents, as they should be informed on what we're doing for them while we're down here. Thank you.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory roll call, Senate File 93. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? No. Cole? No. Cost? No. Landon? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote? Guru, no to aye. Baldwin, no to aye. Landon, no to aye. Murphy, no to aye. No to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 93, 25 aye, 5 no.
Senate File 93, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate File 94, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 94, penalties for mandating COVID-19 vaccinations, 2, sponsored by Senator James.
Senator James, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 94 and ask for your favorable consideration. So this bill applies to public servants as well as federal agents as well that would be trying to enforce any COVID-19 mandates. Violations would conform under 6-8-405 Bravo and would also include, if someone were trying to enforce this, it would include termination from their position as well as loss of benefits for that individual, not their beneficiaries. Their beneficiaries would still receive any benefits that individual has earned. This also enforces the constitutional agreement between corporations and the state. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the bill. I know it seems kind of thick, but the last from pages 8 to 13 are just conforming language for the bill. So thank you.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 94, introductory roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Driscoll? No. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Murphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? No. Cole? No. Cost? No. Landon? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstader? No. Hutchings, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 94, 7 aye, 23 no.
Senate File 94, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, Senate File 94 has failed introduction. Senate File 95, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 95, Public Utilities, Service and Other Territories, sponsored by Senator Driscoll.
Senator Driscoll,
Mr. President, I'd like to have this laid back for one day, please.
absent objection, laying it back. Senate File 96. First reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 96, Collection of Election Ballots Prohibition, sponsored by Senator Beitman.
Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 96 for introduction and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill is entitled Collection of Election Ballots Prohibition. What it means is we're getting rid of the practice of ballot harvesting. I'm sure you've all heard that phrase before. This is a second bill in a series of election integrity bills being brought to you this session. The first from my good friend from Goshen County. This bill, if you look at it, what it does is it goes in and changes how we collect absentee ballots. You notice on page 2, there's 2 methods you can use. The old fashioned way is mail it in, or you can hand deliver it to your county clerk. It outlaws the practice of groups of people or another person collecting these absentee ballots and submitting them, i.e. ballot drop boxes and the like. This is just a common sense voter integrity measure. I worked with the chief election officer on this bill during the interim. It's an important fix, a loophole that we need to take care of here in Wyoming, and I ask for your support. Also, if you look on page 4, section 2, the Secretary of State shall promulgate all rules necessary to implement this act. And he's also going to come up with a form to, in case of a person who's immobile and can't get that ballot in, if they need somebody to take it for them, a child or a guardian or whoever, there will be a form promulgated by the Secretary of State's office to fill out to make sure that it's a chain of custody issue with these ballots, and it's a voter integrity thing. So ask for your aye vote. Thank you. Vote aye.
Thank you, Senator. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 96, introductory roll call, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. No. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. James. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Kolb. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Aye. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 96, 27 aye, 3 no.
Senate File 96, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate File 97, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 97, Change in Party Affiliation, sponsored by Senator Beitman.
Senator Beitman, welcome back.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 97 for introduction and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is an oldie but a goodie. It's an old friend of ours. We passed it a couple years ago. I'm asking for your support again. This is the Change in Party Affiliation Bill. It's another election integrity bill aimed at restoring integrity to the primary election process to prevent folks that are not members of a party to come in and vote in somebody else's party to influence the outcome of that election. It's a big deal in Wyoming. It's very controversial, obviously, but I think it's important that people feel confident that their vote's not going to get canceled out. And it's very important. If you look at the bill, what it does is that on page 2, we're going to say on the day the filing period begins for the primary election, you can no longer change your party affiliation until after the primary election. That closes off the primary for a few months. If you still need to change your primary or your party affiliation, you have a couple of years between primary elections. You have until May to do so the year of the primary election. And you can do so after the primary election, between the primary and general election. We worked with the county clerks to make sure that they're okay with the bill and there's no nothing in there that makes their life any more difficult than it already is. Worked with the Secretary of State's office again through the interim on this bill. It's a good little bill and I appreciate your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory roll call, Senate File 97. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? No. Landon? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 97, 20 aye, 10 no.
Senate File 97, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate File 99, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 99, Public Monies, Deposits and Credit Unions, sponsored by Senator Nethercott.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for introduction of Senate File 99, Public Monies, Deposits in Credit Unions. Good senators, as a former County 10 and Wrangler, this issue is near and dear to my heart. And it's one that's been debated in the legislature for many years. There's kind of this, I would call, absurdity in the law where our statute only allows for the deposits of public funds, which would be special districts, cities, towns, and counties in the state, to hold those funds in banks, and prohibits the use, or it doesn't prohibit them, but doesn't expressly allow for their use in credit unions. And it's time to allow that disparity to be rectified, primarily because most of our rural communities don't have a bank in those small towns, primarily the home of the Wranglers, which receives deposits in that community, in that small town, of at least 20,000 a day. And they have nowhere to deposit those funds but in their local safe. And someone has to drive back and forth to the big city and the county seats in County 10 to deposit those funds. And it just doesn't work. It's not pragmatic. And it's creating a real hardship for those smaller communities where those credit unions do have a local foothold there and can provide services to those public institutions. And so I would ask for your favorable consideration and allow for this bill to be heard on the Senate floor and to just rectify what should have been rectified a long time ago, and allow for full access to credit unions to be able to serve our public institutions in the same way and subject to the same protections as our banks. So I ask it for your favorable consideration.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 99, introductory roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 99, 28 aye, 2 no.
Senate File 99, having received a 2/3 majority vote, has passed the Senate File 99 is referred to Committee Number 1 Judiciary. Senate File 100, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 100, stocking amendments, sponsored by Senator Landon.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move introduction of Senate File 100. And fellow senators, this is a continuing effort to get a look at these statutes, which are kind of a moving target. You might remember 2 or 3 years ago, the chairman of Judiciary did some outstanding work with that committee. We still have a little bit of work left ahead of us. And I wanted to read to you a note that I received this morning from up in the northeast corner, the Majority Floor Leaders District. While assisting a county deputy to locate a tag, which is a device designed for locating lost items, in a female victim's vehicle placed by her estranged husband, I began searching the Wyoming state statutes for stalking. I observed that there was not a specification for any electronic or GPS device. When questioned, the male suspect admitted to purchasing and placing the electronic device specifically to track his estranged wife. This was the first case. Since this case in November, there have been several since, including a suspect tracking using a pin from a victim's cell phone, along with another tag type device. It is concerning for law enforcement to try to keep victims safe when there is not proper updating the legislation as technology advances. Folks, that gives you an idea that this really is going on out on the streets in our jurisdictions, every one of our districts. This is a problem. It's a dangerous problem because as we've talked about before, in the world of stalking, it almost always escalates. This is a good little bill. It's tightly written. And I would appreciate if you'd support it so we can get it to our Judiciary Committee. I look forward to having them take a look at it, Mr. President. But I think it's necessary that we continue the battle to keep our statutes up to date. Hope you'll introduce Senate File 100.
Thank you. Senator, Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 100, introductory roll call. Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. James. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 130 aye.
Senate File 100, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 1 Judiciary. Senate File 101, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 101, epinephrine and naloxone administration authority, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you. Senator Rothfuss. Oh, do you have privilege or you want to wait till the introduction or? Okay, let's do. Kind Chairman, he's giving you time. Go ahead.
Senators, I'd like to introduce some lifelong friends of ours in the gallery to the north of my wife and I, Jim, Laura, and their son Brandon Althouse. They grew up in Cody, moved to Casper, and Jim worked in the oil industry for a number of years. They currently live in Oklahoma City, where Jim worked for the Oklahoma State Legislature. And my wife, to the left, that one there, of almost 47 years. So I would ask that you give them a very warm welcome.
Welcome to the Senate. Appreciate all of you coming. Jim, maybe you'll have to give us a little cross-reference work on what happens in Oklahoma. All right, let's go ahead. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for the introduction of Senate File 101, epinephrine and naloxone administration authority. It's actually specifically a bill relevant more to the epinephrine side of it. Epinephrine, as you may recall, these are the EpiPens that are used for anaphylaxis. If somebody goes into an anaphylactic reaction, then the first aid that you want to give is quickly an EpiPen. We have coverage in statute for K-12 and for Good Samaritan use of EpiPens, but there's a little glitch. We don't have coverage for our higher education institutions to get a generic prescription so that they can store it on hand, for example, in one of the residence halls. We don't have any capacity for, we'll say, a church group or a provider that has service for kids to get a generic prescription. So what people end up doing generally is just getting their own prescription or having an EpiPen handy to provide that first aid. This just addresses that by giving an authority to have a generic prescription if you have a justification for it so that you could have it on hand for first aid use. Hopefully just a little cleanup, Mr. President. I'd ask for everybody's introductory vote.
Thank you. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 101, roll call, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Murphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. James. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Kolb. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 101, 30 aye.
Senate File 101, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor Health. Senate File 103, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 103, Education, Limitations on Teaching Critical Race Theory 2, sponsored by Senator McEwen.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Senate File 103 and ask for your favorable consideration. It's a pretty simple bill. It has two parts to it. The first part is a requirement to teach the U.S. Constitution and the Wyoming Constitution and requires students to pass an exam on those. There's 3 years of instruction required in K through 8, 1 year during high school and 1 year during college in order to earn a baccalaureate degree. The second part of the bill prohibits critical race theory training or teaching on a basis of sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, national origin. The idea is to get the divisive teaching out of the school and let everybody understand their own rights and freedoms. And maybe we can fix some of the problems that are going on. So I would ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory roll call, Senate File 103, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? No. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstader?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote? Closing. Vote to close. Senate File 103, 25 aye, 5 no.
Senate File 103, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Senate File 104, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 104, unappropriated federal funds, reporting and limitations, sponsored by Senator McEwen.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 104 and ask for your favorable consideration. Once again, it's a pretty simple bill. After we get done appropriating federal funds, if we receive further federal funds in the future, it will require legislative approval to accept and expend those funds. The goal behind this bill is to get as many eyes on it in a fairly quick time to ensure that we identify any of the strings that are attached and make sure we protect the citizens of the great state of Wyoming. So once again, I ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 104, introductory roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Kinsky? Aye to no. Driscoll? Aye to no. Furphy? No. I'm sorry. Furphy? No to aye. I apologize. Cooper? Cooper? Aye to no. Landon? Aye to no. Cost? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 104, 18 aye, 12 no.
Senate File 104, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, Senate File 104 has failed introduction. Next up, Senate File 105. Reading clerk, read the bill.
Senate File 105, nuclear power generation and storage amendments 2, sponsored by Senator Anderson.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of Senate File 105, nuclear power generation and storage amendments 2. In the nuclear power plant that we're bringing into Kemmerer, that is a test plant, so our rules do not apply as much to that test plant as they do to any other plants that could be brought into Wyoming. So we looked at our statutes and what we'd have to clean up in our statutes to let another power plant come into the state. We anticipate that they'll place more nuclear plants into our state because we have the transmission lines to be able to get the electricity out. And we have these new advanced plants don't need as much water, but we have enough water to run these plants. One of the big things in this bill is we're changing the name from small nuclear plants to advanced. The advanced ones are the sodium cooled that are far safer than the water cooled plants. So that's an advantage we want to have in Wyoming. We have to comply with the National Regulatory Commission's rules on these nuclear plants. And one of those is the storage of waste on site. So since they don't have a place to put them permanently, the rule is that they have to place all their waste right on site, which at first won't amount to anything. You won't notice anything for 3 or 4 years on any plant. Bigger than that is all the reporting that they require from those nuclear plants. And so we've written that right into the rule, right into the bill. The other thing that we've done, sometime in the past, we passed a tax for $5 on nuclear, $5 megawatt hour on nuclear produced electricity. We have 0 on solar and 0 on coal, and we have passed $1 on wind. But the $5 will not fly. Right now, we're trying to get plants that are trying to make a decision for 5 to 7 years from now, and that is a real sticker. There will not be another plant in Wyoming if we continue to tax it at $5. So this bill eliminates that tax. The thing I already told you about the advanced nuclear plants, that's one of the big changes in here, and the rest is just complying with NRC rules. I'd appreciate your positive vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 105, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Whitman. No. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. No. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. No. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. No. James. No. Kinsky. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. Aye. McEwen. No. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. No. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 105, 22 aye, 8 no.
Senate File 105, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Senate File 106, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 106, Wyoming Stable Token Act, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for the introduction of Senate File 106, Wyoming Stable Token Act, and ask for the body's favorable consideration. Mr. President, at the opposite end of the spectrum from the previous bill that I introduced in terms of how much it does is this bill, which does quite a bit. It would be the first of its kind in the country, one of the first of its kind in the world, but it is stemming from work from the Blockchain Select Committee, and it relates to a stable token and the possible issuance of a stable token by the state of Wyoming. A stable token is representative of, in this case, a US dollar. So it's not a traditional virtual currency that floats all over the place. It would be something which is backed by assets that the state of Wyoming would hold in trust on behalf of the owners of those tokens. There's a lot of complexity here. I do not know, honestly, whether we're ready for this, but I want to begin the conversation This is a bill that begins the conversation in a way that will attract a lot of dialogue. It already has. And I hope that we can begin the conversation with this legislation. You'll see as you go through it that it would provide for the capacity for the issuance of a stable token, but that if there are any barriers to that issuance, that we would push pause and effectively have more time to look at the law, look at any potential needs and concerns, and then restructure it. There is a tremendous opportunity here for entities that are the first movers in this space, as with a lot of the things that we've been doing through the Blockchain Select Committee. This is an important dialogue. And Mr. President, one of the keys here is that the federal government is currently looking at ways to tighten down and regulate the utilization, implementation, issuance of these types of virtual currencies, specifically stable tokens. I want to make sure that Wyoming is necessarily at the table in that dialogue. We can be at the table and a focal point of that conversation, an important partner in that discussion, if we have legislation like this on the table for consideration and we're working it again through that select committee in the interim. I hope you'll support this. And Mr. President, you have my assurance that if we're not ready, I think you can all have confidence that I'll shut this down if it doesn't look like it's a good move forward, delay the starting date, delay the effective date, do whatever it takes. But I want the opportunity to have this dialogue because first mover does matter here. I don't want to wait until the general session to have the dialogue. And I hope you'll all support our opportunity to be the first mover in this space, the first player in this space, and have an authoritative voice at the table as the federal government looks to regulate it, Mr. President. With that, I would ask everybody's support for introduction.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 106, introductory roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Baru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. James? No. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? No. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? No. Closing vote. Salazar? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 106, 19 aye, 11 no.
Senate File 106, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, Senate File 106 has failed introduction. Senate File 108, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 108, social credit scores, use prohibited, sponsored by Senator Beitman.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 108 for introduction and ask for your favorable vote. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill is a very important consumer protection bill. I encourage you to take a very, very close look at it. Last year, we passed in the 21 budgets or general session, we passed a bill to protect our firearm industry from discriminatory lending practices. This bill adds more to that to protect Wyoming's core industries like ag and minerals, and also individual consumers from being debanked based on their social credit scores. Now, if you don't know what a social credit score is or what ESG scores are, I highly encourage you to research this. This is a very fast changing part of our economy. It's a tool being used by financial institutions to discriminate against you and basically debank you or seize your assets if you don't have the right social credit score. So if you have your bill, please turn to page 2. What we do is we go into where we had that new legislation from our firearm statute last session and insert A. No financial institution shall discriminate against any person or business entity based on a person's social credit score, an ESG score, or other subjective evaluation or metric. Social media posts, participation or membership in any lawful club, association, a union, political affiliation, employer, or any other values-based criteria similar to a social credit score. Very important that we get this protection in place. We're seeing across the country, certain people being debanked only for the sole purpose of their politics or their financial transactions and the types of businesses that they engage. Lawful businesses, but they may not be, quote, woke enough for these financial institutions. Please, I encourage you to vote aye on this and let's move it forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 108, introductory roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 108, 25 aye, 5 no.
Senate File 108, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Senate File 109, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 109, Wyoming Gaming Commission Board Member Conduct, sponsored by Senator Ellis.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move introduction of Senate File 109, Wyoming Gaming Commission Board Member Conduct, and would ask for the body's aye vote. Members, as you'll recall, last year, the legislature passed a law authorizing this wagering of sports betting online. And so during the rulemaking process this summer, the commission was talking about the ability of members of the commission to place wagers on sports bets. And in their discussion of including that in their rules, it was identified as a best practice, an industry standard across the country. And I was a little dismayed and shocked to hear that the commission declined adopting that in their rule. And so upon further looking on rules, I was even more alarmed that there is no prohibition for members of our gaming commission to, or parimutuel commission until we get the Scrivener's error fixed, from participating in the very games they regulate. This means you can only imagine how the credibility of our commission suffers if, for say, one of the commission members put some money in one of the gaming machines and hit a jackpot, or participate in a parimutuel event. And so to get our commission up to industry standards, that's what this bill would do. It would prohibit members of the commission as well as staff from engaging and having financial interest in the activity that they regulate. To the point about this being an outlier, we heard testimony this summer from the Wyoming Lottery. They have this prohibition for their members and their board. In looking at the Public Service Commission, they have prohibitions on their commissioners from having any financial interest in the utilities they regulate. So this really is an industry standard. It's something that we do with what other Wyoming regulated commissions or commissions that have regulatory authority, just trying to make sure that we keep this one in line because it is important for the public to have confidence in their gaming board. So with that, I'd urge your aye vote.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 109, introductory roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? I. Salazar. I. Schuler. I. Scott. I. Steinmetz. I. Wasserberger. I. President Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 10930 I.
Senate File 109, having received a 2/3 majority vote, referred to committee number 6. Travel. Senate File 95, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 95, Public Utilities, Service and Other Territory, sponsored by Senator Driscoll.
Senator Driscoll.
What are we on?
Senate file. Oh, we laid it back.
I
We'll lay back one day, correct?
That made me have a heart
Okay.
attack.
Senator Perkins, please keep an eye on Senator Driscoll. Okay. There we go. We're going to lay that back one day, folks. So let's do this. Let's go to standing committees, and Senator Driscoll, if you're in good health, be thinking about what you want to do for the timing of lunch. Let's go to reports from standing committees.
February 16, 2022. Mr. President, Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 27, Dissolution of County Boards Authority, respectively report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. Senator Nethercott, Chairman. February 16, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 36, Pharmacy Benefit Managers Act enhancements, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Bouchard, Hutchings, and McEwen. Noes, Senators Baldwin and Furphy. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. February 16, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 38, Monthly Ad valorem Tax Revisions, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Garou, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman. February 16, 2022, Mr. President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 98, Federal Emergency COVID-19 Relief Funding Limitations. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Garou, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman. February 16, 2022, Mr. President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 32, K-3 Reading Assessment and Intervention Program, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Garou, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman. February 16, 2022, Mr. President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 8, Weed and Pest Reorganization. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Garou, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman. February 16, 2022, Mr. President, Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 3, Radioactive Materials Transport Fee. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Furphy, Landon, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Landon, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Floor Leader, we're going to charge into these seconds unless you have any other counsel. Okay, so be it. That's what we'll do. Bills on second reading. Senate File 6, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 6, Aquatic Invasive Species Inspection Enforcement.
There are no amendments. Senate File 6 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, the bill is so ordered. Senate File 9, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 9, Revenue Bonds for Agricultural Endeavors.
There are amendments. Just let me call on you here first, okay? Let me just, this is on, let's read in the amendment, second reading amendment. to Senate File 9. Read
Senate
it in,
File
please.
9, second reading amendment number 1, page 10, after line 2, insert.
Now, Senator French, if you would move it and explain it.
Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 9 and ask for your favorable consideration. Page 10 after line 2.
Let's have you move a little closer to your microphone, Senator. Thank you. There we go. Appreciate it. Thank you. Now,
I'll get this.
start right at the top. I interrupted you twice now.
No, I need help. After page 10, line 2, insert and renumber as necessary. Romanet I, 3I. Not be seeking council financing for a project that would directly compete with an existing business, entity, or person in a similar industry classification within the same county. Page 10, line 4, delete Romanet 3 and insert Romanet 4. Page 12, line 23, delete and. Page 12 in your bill, after line 23, insert and renumber as necessary. Romanet 2 is not seeking financing for a project that would directly compete with an existing business, entity, or person in a similar industry classification within the same county. And page 13, line 2, delete Romanet 2 and insert Romanet 3. Colleagues, the reason for this in committee, Senate File 9 is a good bill. It really is. It deals with the bonds and everything. But I had a concern, I brought it up, and that, we're talking a lot of money here, and that we don't have a big outfit get a bunch of these bonds and come into a county and directly compete with an existing business. It just flat, in my opinion, may knock them out of business. Maybe they're small mom and pop, meat processing facility, that maybe 2 or 3 head a day or something, and it's viable for them. And you get a big outfit that comes in, it just may flat put them out of business. So that's why I brought the amendment. And I urge your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate my ag committee members for bringing this amendment. I think it strengthens the bill. It clarifies our intent. And certainly while it seems right now there's no shortage of opportunity for increasing agricultural processing, and there may be a day where these considerations become more acute. We don't want to pick favorites among the private sector. This is a good amendment that clarifies our intent, ensures that it can't be used to gain an unfair advantage for one entity over another. I urge your support.
Thank you, Chairman. Further discussion or questions? Question being called. On first reading amendment, on second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 9, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The amendment has passed. Second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 9. Read it in, please.
Senate File 9, second reading amendment number 2, page 3, line 1, after.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 9 and ask for your favorable consideration. As we visited on this bill yesterday, it really is a good bill. I'm excited to see it take effect. But the one thing that I had concern about is just making sure we had some more elected officials looking things over as we start this new process and this new endeavor. And so all I'm doing is inserting the State Land and Investment Board on page 3, line 1. And you can read the amendment for yourself, but the meat is contained. It just says any objection by a majority of the members of the State Loan and Investment Board shall prevent issuance of this bond. And so that's just my intention. Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd ask for your aye vote.
Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a good amendment as well. It provides consistency. If these opportunities already exist at the local level, it requires approval of elected officials at the local level. This mimics that principle. It's a good principle to have. I urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Further discussion. Let's go to Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I wonder about this amendment. Has anybody consulted with the members of the slip board? This are 5 electeds. They have all kinds of time burdens on them. And I really wonder if they're gonna have the time to pay proper attention to something like this. And if maybe we had better find some other mechanism of achieving what's wanted here. I know that was on some other issues, and that can be a major consideration. And you may have to add staff to them. But I think it may be a too much, at the very age, is too much of a time burden.
Further discussion? Senator French.
I stand in support of this amendment. I think it's a good amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Question? Question? Question on the amendment? All those in favor of second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 9, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The amendment has passed. On to second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 9. Read it, clerk, read it in.
Senate File 9, second reading amendment number 3, page 4, line 13, delete.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd move third reading amendment, second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 9. Ask the body to vote aye. What you see on this bill, is very, not this amendment, is very simple. It goes in and deals with some of the concerns that were, a number of concerns were expressed when we discussed the bill yesterday. So again, it goes in there and you see it delete delete solely be the obligation, shall solely be the obligation. So ultimately we have of the council. The object there was, of course, to remove the state, to make it clear that the state is not, that this is not bonding by the state or any of its entities. This is only the only place that anybody looks for repayment on these are the revenues that are generated in connection with the project. And so it goes in and deletes that. So now the sentence will read, the bonds shall recite on their face that they do not constitute obligations to the state or any political subdivisions of the state. So that's how the bill will read after, if this amendment is adopted. So it makes clear that this is not a general obligation of the state or the business council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Further discussion? Further discussion? Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a good amendment. Vote aye.
So be it. Any further discussion? Question being called. Second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 9. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Amendment has passed. Back on the bill. Senate File 6, having been read, two separate. Oh, excuse me, Senate File 9, having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it's so ordered. Senate File 10. Second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 10, Predator Control, sponsored by the Agriculture Committee.
There are no amendments. Senate File 10, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 19, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 19, County Optional Property Tax Refund Program, sponsored by the Revenue Committee.
There are no amendments. Senate File 19, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 34, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 34, Inheritance Tax Fees Repeal, sponsored by the Revenue Committee.
Senate File 34, there are no amendments. Senate File 34, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it's so ordered. Senate File 66, read it, clerk, read it in.
Senate File 66, American Rescue Plan Act Recovery Funds Appropriations, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee.
There are amendments.
Senate File 66, second reading amendment number 1, page 15 after line 2N.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is what we pulled
Need you to-
out and
I need you
yesterday.
to move the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President. I'd move second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 66 and ask the body to vote aye. This is, yesterday, there was a standing committee amendment and the first paragraph, we thought there was an error. This comes back and corrects that paragraph. So what this does is beginning March 27th, you can read this, beginning December 31st of 2026, which is certain deadlines within the America Rescue Plan Act. Capital project funds that the state applies for and receives and which are not otherwise appropriated in the 2020 legislature budget session are appropriated to the office of the governor for purposes of that are consistent with the terms of the American Rescue Plan Act. Again, what this does, this goes back to those section 604 funds, which is that 109 million of these capital construction funds. And so this limits, so it's only dealing with those capital project construction funds, that 109 million. It's not it's none of the other direct ARPA funds. It's just those particular capital funds. We put that in the office of the governor. We've got a number of projects that we're putting forward. There are broadband projects. There's bills that are coming through that have broadband allocations in this. You'll see in the budget bill, there's some allocation for a multi-purpose facility in Teton County. But if none of those projects apply or they're not otherwise eligible as a capital project under the section 604, the 109 million, then this gives the governor the ability to go ahead and expend those in other areas in conformity with the ARPA Act. So it's very specific. It's only the capital project funds, which is that 109 million. It's the section 604 funds. When you add this to the rest of the amendment, then this completes this, and the rest of it's a definition that makes sure that that's what happens. We've already put that in the bill yesterday when we divided that amendment. This comes back and puts that section on with the language that we need in it so that now it's cohesive. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? Any further discussion on the amendment? Question being called on second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 66. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The amendment has passed. Second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 66. Would the reading clerk read it in?
Senate File 66, second reading amendment number 2, page 4 after line 8, insert.
Senator Wasserberger.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 66 and ask for your favorable support. Members of the Senate, this is American Rescue Plan direct money, or ARPD appropriations. And so on page 4, line 8, after line 8, we would insert 045 capacity purchase agreement number 25, and the sum would be $8,832,058. And then as you go on page 12, line 22, we insert this appropriation to the Department of Transportation is the state's expenditure related to capacity purchase agreements for commercial air service in accordance with the Wyoming Commercial Air Service Act. And ladies and gentlemen, this is actually a match. It's a match between the airports and the state, and it's a 60-40 split, 60% being state funds, in this case, ARPA direct funds and airport funds. And so the airports pay 40%, the ARPA direct funds would be 60%. And I think that we all know what the impact was of the COVID pandemic on airports and transportation, and the amount of people who were flying the airplanes dropped to almost zero for months. And so this is an opportunity to use ARPA direct funds to help our local airports. And those are the airports that are across the state
You could look in Campbell County, also Sweetwater County, Fremont County, and Sheridan County, and other airports might be impacted also. The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic have been the most damaging of any event in the history of the airline industry. And so that is the reason for this money. The question is, do you believe we should use ARPA direct funds to do that, to help our local airports? And so I ask for your favorable vote.
Mr. Wasserberger, and just confirming you moved that too, is correct?
I'm sorry, I thought I did move it. I
You may
did
have-
move
you
it, but
may
I'll
have.
move it again. Mr.
Okay,
President.
no, wait, Chief Clerk, in charge of everything, says you moved it. Okay, thank
sorry.
you. Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on and against the amendment, this is, my concern is we can say in here, and we can have the debate that says that this qualifies as an ARPA direct expenditure. Going back to the little abbreviation sheet we go, just reading from that, we're talking about ARPA direct funds or the American Recovery Act, Rescue Plan Act of direct funds. 6 expenditure categories that fall under the ARPA direct per the US Treasury are public health, negative economic impact, services that disproportionately impact communities, premium pay, infrastructure, and administrative. So we've heard an explanation. This is due to negative impacts. Fair enough. Is it all due to negative impacts? You can't just say it's a negative impact and presto changeo, it qualifies. So while I believe that certainly that COVID obviously had an impact on airlines, was that the reason that the capacity purchase agreement is $8 million, almost $9 million underwater? Probably part of that, yes. All of it, I don't know. And the question of I don't know means if you're wrong, you have to pay it back. So if there's some additional evidence or other things we can have to bolster this, we ought to look at that. We ought to look at that, and this will come up in the, well, again, this is money that we appropriate under the Aeronautics Division of the Department of Transportation. We'll get a chance to look at this in the budget next week. We can deal with that. We may be able to get some more information and decide how much we can do from direct ARPA, and we can include that in a budget amendment to that bill next week. But I have great concerns that we are overstepping if we simply say, hey, all of the deficiency in the capacity purchase agreement is due to COVID. I'm not sure that that's the case. I know it was getting very close and it was performing well prior to COVID hit. It was very close to being what we all thought it and hoped it would be, which is self-funding. But I don't think it was quite there yet. And to simply say that this is COVID related, I think part of that's true, but not all of it. I don't believe all of it's true. And we better make sure there's ways to do this. We can still have a shot at this next week to make sure it happens if this is what the body wants. But to simply say we believe it's COVID and not have a backstop or not allow for this in another way, we may, it's fair enough. When we get one of these days when we get audited, we may have to pay it back. And that's not an idle threat. Under the CARES Act, there were states were audited that didn't use the CARES Act in compliance with the federal statute, and they got substantial bills back. And they said, well, hey, those are the classic example was a state to the east of us, a few states to the east of us, tried to do an entire computer system. Well, it helped us so we didn't have to deal with public. It was all related to COVID-19 pandemic, and so it clearly met within the CARES Act. They wrote a check for almost $100 million back to the federal government because when they were audited, it didn't comply with the requirements. So just be careful as you tread lightly. You vote how you want to vote. There's another way to do this to make sure that we don't do it wrong. This one I have concerns about. Therefore, in the abundance of caution, I'm asking you to vote no on this one, and we can talk about it again next week. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. First, further discussion, Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't going to rise, but that actually created 2 or 3 questions in my mind, and really appreciate the Chairman of Appropriations. But I guess at first blush, when I saw this amendment, I thought, well, this seems entirely appropriate to me. That's exactly what these rescue funds are for, and I can't think of another industry that's been hit any harder than that one. So there was that, but now I'm being encouraged to not vote this in here, and I'm okay to consider not doing that. I just wonder if we're going to have a shot at it next week. This will be the second item that we've been asked to push to next week. I guess my question to the chairman is, do we have any opportunity within the budget bill, Mr. President, to pull in the opportunity to spend these federal funds? That's my question, is that if we lock ourselves into next week, then are we looking at general fund dollars? And then the second question really is the fact that, okay, if it's found that we didn't quite spend this money correctly and we have to repay it, isn't part of our 60-40 commitment that we're going to have to pay this anyway? A portion of that, we're on the hook for this, are we not? So those two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Senator Kinsky. We'll go back to the Chair of Appropriations
Thank you.
later.
To my colleague from Casper, I can address part of that concern. You will get another grab at the brass ring on the budget. The original bill, it's funded through the Department of Transportation, and that's one of the budgets that obviously that we'll consider. And there are other places in the budget where we called out an expenditure and said, instead of general fund dollars, use ARPD money. So we'll have another grab at it, time to answer some of the chairman's questions and bring it back for further consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President.
Thank you. Do we want to, okay, let's go to Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against the amendment, I'm but in support of our airport in my locality. I think this is the wrong vehicle to look at to try to fund it. I look forward to next week when I think it's more proper and we can have a bit more time to review the process and what we're doing. I think it's too soon. It's too risky. But I do support our airports. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, let's go back to Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and just to build on what we've talked about, one of the other discussions that's coming out that we're trying to find these very answers to fund these type of projects. But the transportation infrastructure bill is out there. We're trying to see what those rules, regulations are, whether this would be the kind of eligible expenses that would come through there. We're still waiting on the federal government on a lot of those rules. So hopefully we have more resolutions. This may be an appropriate mechanism for those transportation funds that are out there right now in the federal domain. And I guess what we would like to do is have an opportunity to look at that also, or maybe the sponsors, is to go see if this type of project, get with our staff, the budget staff, and see if they've got time to take a quick look in the rules in the transportation bill, whether these type of projects would be eligible. And that's a discussion that we had quite a bit in JAC meetings, is trying to balance, what should we spend ARPA money? No, when it may be available through application for the transportation funding. In other words, try to get the biggest bang for the buck for the state of Wyoming. I have a sneaking suspicion that this may be eligible through those type of fundings, but let's find out the answer to that question. And so there was some rational discussion on some of these items. So unfortunately, I'm going to be on and against the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Perkins. Did you want to follow up? Well, let's do it this way. Chairman Perkins, and then back to the sponsor.
Thank you. And I appreciate my fellow appropriators. These are questions we wrestled with all through the session. We had to back up, start over, do things. We thought things would be eligible. Then we look at it more. We have staff looking at these things all the time because we're trying not to step on our own necktie. And so this is, the other thing I would tell you that we went through our budget hearings. We had a long hearing with the Department of Transportation, which the Aeronautics Division is included in that. That's where the capacity purchase is funded. Nobody said a word about this that I can remember. I'm looking at my appropriations. I'm seeing shaking heads. So this is new to us. So give us a little bit of time. You'll have another bite at the apple. We can run this by staff. We can look at it. We can also run it downstairs because the executive branch is looking all at these things. We're all trying to figure these things out together. And so again, for example, my understanding is that the capacity purchase agreement was fairly close. So let's just throw out a number and say that this total amount in the capacity purchase agreement, which we all thought that would pay for itself, and it was close. Let's say it's 5% off. Let's say that we look at that and it's 5% off. Fair enough. 95% of this appropriation might be appropriate out of, because you'll be able to demonstrate the loss in air traffic and the loss of the revenue that would have come through the capacity purchase agreement. You can probably justify maybe, I don't know if it's 90, I don't know if it's 85, I don't know if it's 95% of this being direct ARPA. But but the other 5%, if you can't find some rational relationship between it and what happened as a result of as a direct negative impact of COVID, then you potentially on the hook. And my understanding is, at least in the CARES Act, that if you're wrong on the 5%, I think you end up paying back 100%. So and I'm not sure of that, but I think that that's what happened. And that was CARES Act. This is a different act. Treasury's still giving us guidance on these things. We're all going to do the best that we can. We do have a number of things in the budget bill that will give the executive branch that if additional guidance or something comes out, that we can move that around. We've got that set up in the general budget bill next week. So this isn't just a stiff arm and a brush and then we're going to stick it in your next week. We'll oppose your opponent next week because we're going to defend our bill, or oppose an amendment next week because we're going to defend our bill. But we'll have more information that we'll share with you so that we all can make the right decision. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Wasberger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just quickly, Mr. President, and I don't think that there's any industry out there that had the pandemic effects that the airline industry did. And I think that is indisputable. And so I ask for your favorable vote on this. But I would challenge your committee number 2, that if it's not here in this bill, where is it? Where does it go? So I ask for your favorable vote.
Thank you. Second reading amendment number 2, Senate File 6. So question? Question be, pardon? Yeas and nays. Oh, because of money. Thank you. Appreciate the reminder. Yeas and nays. And once again, we are on second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 66. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 2, Senate File 66. Roll call, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. No. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. No. Ellis. Aye. French. No. Furphy. Aye. Guru. No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. James Conflict? James Conflict. Kinsky? No. Cole? No. Cost? Aye. Landon? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? No. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? No. Closing vote? Cooper, aye to no. Closing vote? Closing. Cost, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote. Closed. Senate File 66, 11 aye, 18 no, 1 conflict.
Second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 66 has failed. Senate File 66 having been read 2 separate times, the question, Senator Scott?
Mr. President, after that last debate, I'm sensing some confusion and some concern here. There's obviously an interplay between this bill and the general budget bill. And frankly, affects me on two understands, but part of that interplay, I think many of us present are not. And I really, the fear I'm getting is that the fear, well, you can't do that in the budget bill, you had to do that in the bill that you already passed. And that, and we're already hearing you can't do that in this bill, it does not belong in the budget bill. Mr. President, I'm asking the leadership to give us some kind of device where we can understand what the relationship between these bills is. And I wonder, Mr. President, if it would be wise to hold this bill over for final action to next week, or somewhere where we can, when we get a mix-up between these bills, we can have the ability to retrieve them. I'm concerned that our process is likely to leave us rather unsatisfied in the end of the whole thing, and unable to take advantage of some of the opportunities that we should take advantage of.
Let's go ahead and have the vote on the second reading. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. We got one more amendment coming, folks. Put off your lunch plans. Senator Kinsky.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to briefly respond to my colleague from Bates Creek. Your Appropriations Committee will certainly not make that objection. That seems unfair, but we've got to keep this bill moving along. This is not a mirror bill like the budget bill. It's got to go through this house, and then it's got to go to the other house, and it's got to go to conference, and then hopefully to the governor. So I would ask that we not delay this until next week, but keep it in play. Your Appropriations Committee is not going to knock down these amendments because you should have brought it up this week instead of next.
I'm probably with you on that. The Chair of Appropriations, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For example, if you go to, I mean, if you want to know where you can put some of these things, please come and talk to us or talk to fiscal staff. They'll help you find that. I mean, if you go, I think it's line 13 on page of the budget where the Aeronautics Division is called out in the Wyoming, in the Department of Transportation. And so putting an amendment that looks much like this, or whether it looks like this, if we decide that we look at those facts and the background behind the shortage and the capacity purchase agreement that we just talked about, Mr. Chairman, that if we look at that and, you know, we can maybe look at some of the facts and make a determination. And even if we vote against it, doesn't mean we won't help you put an amendment together to do that. I can tell you that we did use significant amounts of direct ARPA money the ARPA direct money in the budget bill. In a number of places, you'll see footnotes that talk about that. It looks, when you get into the footnote, it looks like a cut to the Department of Health, but they were clearly ARPA direct dollars we could use. So we supplanted those with direct ARPA dollars, and you'll find a footnote that says those are not, that they're supposed to come back with those back in the general fund at the next biennial budget request. It's still part of the standard budget just because we moved to ARPA for 1 year. And I see some shaking the head, and you should be shaking your heads. We have struggled with this, but we will be absolutely straightforward with you in how to fashion your amendments. You can have the direct ARPA dollars are still in play. There's 128 million that are not appropriated that are still out there. You can still do that. You can do it in this bill, which we tried to just keep straight ARPA direct. But there is all three kinds of ARPA money in the budget bill. And so you can work with all direct ARPA, and there's a place in the budget bill that you can put about anything you want to do with this, except for maybe stand up a new program. Anyway, that's that, you know, and we're happy if the leadership wants to have Senate-wide caucus or something so we can go through some of these things and put it together, we're more than happy to do that. But we're all working within the constraints that these aren't constraints the Joint Appropriations Committee put. These are constraints that individuals brought forth several years ago that made us divide these budgets up. And we thought that in many respects, by having this in a separate bill, because it is so darn complicated, that would be helpful if we had a series of direct ARPA projects and actions that were basically going to be one time, weren't going to be necessarily ongoing. And so that's what you find in the budget bill we have, in the bill we have before us with the direct ARPA bill that we've been discussing and we're still working on, Mr. President. And so, and many of those were things that came out of the governor's strike force that put those things out there. We considered all those. And so there's nothing in this bill that's not direct ARPA. When you get into the budget bill, there's a significant mixture of all the different kinds of ARPA dollars in the budget bill. And so it's been a little bit of a Rubik's Cube to get it all to fit together. So I've never been able to fully do a Rubik's Cube, Mr. President. So I understand the frustration and we'll all do the best that we can. But we have to work in the confines of the short session and the fact that if we hold it back to the end of next week, it's right at the end of crossover and it impacts the other side's ability to work it as well. We all just happen to work within the rules we have, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. And I respect the request to have additional information. We're going to do this. Let's do this. You know where our appropriation members live on the floor. If you have questions, you go visit with them. If we reach a point where there's a lot of questions, we'll caucus on it. But at this point, we're going to keep everything rolling because this is, we're under a compressed time schedule. So with that, let's move to the next amendment, okay?
Senate File 66, second reading amendment number 3, page 10 after line 7, insert.
Senator Cost, would you move it?
Actually, Chairman, I really wanted this on third reading, so I'm going to ask for you to get back to third reading. Yeah, I'm
Green
withdrawing.
is not third.
I understand that, but
I
it
understand.
was supposed to be on third reading.
Okay, so be it.
So I'd like to.
We're back
withdraw.
on the bill then. Okay, so formally withdraw it for the record. Just formally.
Thank you, sir. I formally withdraw this from second reading.
And he is speaking of second reading amendment number 3 to 66. Go ahead, Senator Case.
In order to withdraw, somebody else could stand up right now and say, I adopt that amendment. So it's absent with objection, the amendment is withdrawn.
Absent objection, we will withdraw it. Thank you. So we kind of got the wheels rolling on that. We pulled it back. Here we go. Let's go back to the bill. Senate File 66, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. That concludes our second. One more. Senate File 74, second reading of the Senate file. Please read it in.
Senate File 74, Water and Sewer District Elections Amendments, sponsored by the Corporations Committee.
Thank you. There are no amendments. Senate File 74, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it's so ordered. Mr. Vice President, would you step on the floor and take on the role of Majority Floor Leader? Would you help, Chairman Boner, would you help Senator Perkins, will you take the responsibilities of the floor leader?
I don't have the script here, but we're just in a point of recess, Mr. Chairman.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move that the Senate stand in recess until 2 o'clock.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Announcements? Go ahead, Senator Baldwin.
Mr. President, 2 announcements. Number 1, your committee number 10, the Perfect 10 committee, excuse me. Don't laugh
Yes,
at that.
it's on.
We're going to meet at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Labor and Health, to consider Senate File 23, nursing home administrator, Senate File 24, pharmacist and pharmacy technician practice, and Senate File 101, epinephrine and naloxone administration authority. The additional thing I had, and I don't know if I can do it here. Nope, we'll do it later this afternoon. That's all you get.
I tell you, you got to check in first. Okay. Senator Grew, did you have something? All right. Either Senator Hicks? No one else? Senator Boner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 5, agriculture, will meet upon adjournment today in Capitol Extension Room W2 and online to consider Senate File 48, 2022 large project funding, Senate File 80, omnibus water plan or water bill construction, Senate File 82, supplemental water development funding.
Senator Case?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, revenue, will meet immediately upon adjournment and the connector W6. We're finished our discussion of Senate File 37, sales tax exemption certify eligibility. Recall we have an amendment to work on that, and then we'll get out of there pretty fast. Understand lunch is available in the connector.
Very good. Any further announcements? Okay, so technically in that call for the recess, we didn't have a time, but Chairman Perkins, you have something for us for your committee?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe we have on noon recess here. So 20 minutes after noon recess, I believe that we're taking up Senate File 73 codifying institutional land fund. And so we've got that on we've got to do today. And so we'll be doing that about 20 minutes after noon recess in 110 downstairs.
Okay, thank you. Where we didn't have a time in that motion to recess. Yeah, we did. All right, thank you. I didn't catch that. Okay. You've heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Senate stands in recess until 2 p.m. Enjoy your lunch, enjoy your